So today we got an oldie but a goodie. It's the Quantum 6.75 on it, and the complaint on it is a no start. So let's get started. So first, let's get this air filter out of the way. And this thing is from 2006, I do believe. Nope, 2011. This is a auto choke, so we got a new filter. Okay, let's get this top off. There's like 2 screws that hold it on. Try not to lose any screws. You get a magnetic ball. And now we can get access to here. Let's get these 3 bolts out. I'll need a 1/4 inch too when the time comes. First, let's look in the gas tank. There is gas. So we're going to speed through taking the airbox off. It's just 3 5/16 screws or bolts, or whatever you want to call them. We'll get it out of the way and move on to the next step. No problem. Yep. Alright, so we're going to open up the carburetor, and what will we find? Let's see, and it is red. It has water in it, but it doesn't look too terribly bad. You know, most of the time the float bowl is pitted and rusting, but I do believe that this was just gas with a lot of water in it and it turned red. Who knows? It's just a mystery, I guess. So right here, I'm going to be cleaning the actual carburetor, getting all the rust and trash and stuff out of it. And I'm just using standard brake cleaner, carb cleaner. There's really not a difference. And I took the bowl gasket off because on some carburetors, carb cleaner will actually cause the bowl gasket to expand and not work. But as you see, I'm spraying out every little piece of dirt that I can see, and especially down every passageway. And it had a lot of trash up in the gas inlet, so I just let it flow through there for a minute, and going through each passage. And this is one passage, and the little one over here in the primer circuit. And now I'm going to take my little piece of wire and go through every small passage, make sure that everything is free. And that doesn't have a primer circuit because it's auto choke. I'm going to make sure that's free and give it one more good spray. You can never use too much carburetor cleaner. And now we can move on to the next step. Alright, and now time to put it back together. I'm checking the bowl gasket to see if it's still good, because they do go bad over time, and it checked out fine, and it still fit good. And now we're going to reassemble it. We're going to take our float and give it a wipe down with a paper towel. Make sure there's no trash on it or anything. And we're going to hook our needle up these clips in there, drop it down, and take our float pin. And now we're ready to put the bowl on. Alright, so I'm going to wipe the bowl out good, make sure there's nothing left behind. We're going to set it on top of the carburetor. The bowl had a lot of trash in it. It's nice and shiny. And now let's look at our main jet and make sure it is clean. And here is our main jet. Use my thin piece of wire again to go right down the center of it. Go through the side, back down the center, and it's good and clear. I'm going to put it over here, spray it off, and what am I doing here? I'll wipe it down, make sure there's no crud left on it. And well, there was a little bit of trash on there, so I took a wire brush and held it with a pair of pliers and cleaned all the debris and sediment and stuff off of it, and give it a spray, give it a shake, and I believe it is ready to go back on. So I'm going to put our washer on, put our bowl nut on, and tighten it down like so. And I'm sure there's a torque setting, but I just tighten it up until it feels comfortable, as you can see here, because you don't want to strip it out. Alright, so you see me with a piece of gas line, and I'm going to hook it up to the carburetor, and we're going to do a vacuum test to see if the needle and seat is working. So when I hold it upside down and the float closes, I'll put it up to about 10 psi, and if that needle does not move, it is good, and when I flip it up and the float drops, it should go to 0. So I just do this a few times to make absolutely sure that the needle valve is working. And it is, because when I flip the carburetor, like so, any minute now, it's holding pressure at 10 psi. And when I flip it, it goes to 0. And that was my cell phone in the background. So we're going to do it again. And flip it, and it goes to 0. So the needle and seat are 100% working. There are no leaks anywhere. So theoretically, this carburetor should not leak, and it should work. But we will see. Alright, so it's time to put the carburetor back on. And I'm going to use some orange Loctite. You can use blue, but I happen to have the bottle of orange, which was closer to me than walking up and going to the toolbox. So we're going to hook the linkage in just like that, being very careful not to break the plastic piece that it fits in, because I've done that more than one time. And we're going to put the mounting bolts in. And what am I using here? I'm probably fumbling for a nut driver or my ratchet or something. Oh, yep, I was changing it out to a nut driver, socket driver, spanner, spinner, whatever you want to call it, because it's easier to start them that way. Then I think I switched back to the ratchet to fully tighten them up. And for some reason this bolt felt a little funny, but it started going in, and like I said, I'm sure there's a torque spec, but I just tighten them up until I feel comfortable with how tight they are. And what is next? So now it's time for the auto choke, and you'll see me fumbling with it, it's because a lot of times these things get stuck when you take them loose, and it takes some time and aggravation and some fumbling around to get it lined up. As you see there, I just kind of shake it around and it falls back into its spot. And I had to unhook the little spring, put the shoulder bolt in, and you don't have to get this super crazy tight. We're going to take our spring, pull it over, and hook it on, and we're good. And yes, I tightened it up. So now I want to take the whole top of the motor off, or engine, or whatever you want to call it, because I noticed that the pull cord was too small a diameter. These engines, or mostly all push mowers, take a number 4.5, and this one had like 3.5 in it, and it looked like really cheap rope. And so we're going to pull the top. Ooh, did it get my camera? No, it didn't. And I was lucky there. So we're going to speed this up, because I really would have hated to have gotten gas on my very expensive camcorder. So you got to take the whole tank off, and then what did I do off camera? Probably looking for a tool or something. No, I took the rope loose and took the top cover off. Hopefully I don't get interrupted. So I had to end up putting pull rope in it, and you got to be very careful when you do these pull ropes, because if that spring lets loose, bad things can happen. I've had it happen to me, and it's not fun. So we're just going to lock it with a screwdriver, and it's too big. So I had to grab a smaller screwdriver, and long story short, come to find out, this recoil spring was a little bit too weak, so it didn't pull enough rope in, but it still pulled the engine over fast enough to start it, even with not a lot of rope. And you always want to harden the end of the rope, that way it goes into its the slot where you put it through into the recoil. Makes it a whole lot easier. And we're going to pull it through, and I just tie a standard knot that looks just like this. You can say I'm wrong all you want in the comments, but I've been putting pull rope in push mowers for many, many years, and I've never had a knot that I've tied come undone. Never once. So now we're going to feed the rope in. These things hold about 6 feet of pull rope, I think 72 to 80 inches. It might seem like a lot, but it's really not. And it calls for number 4.5 rope is what most push mowers take. The newer EX series of Briggs engines, I think, use 3.5, something really, really thin, because they redesigned them engines to pull over easier. They weigh like 20 pounds, so there's really not much force to overcome when you pull start them, because they all have decompression on the camshafts. So as you see here, it works good enough. And in the end, the customer was more than happy. He was very happy. So we're going to put the recoil back on. And, well, what am I doing off camera? Probably looking for some, oh yes, the nut driver to put the bolt back in the oil stick. And hope y'all are liking these new style videos. This video has taken a lot of time to make. And I'm going to put the rope through there. And this is where I made a mistake. And I'll leave it in. Put the gas tank on first, put your rope through. You won't have to take it all apart, but I told you this is not a mistake. I was sizing the rope so I could cut it off of the spool. That way I can get the spool out of the way. Just remember to put the gas tank on. You'll be all good. So I thought about speeding this part up, but I'll leave it normal speed. We're going to put the, not that on. We're going to put the gas tank on. That's very important. It will not function without the gas tank. So I'm doing something off camera. I'm probably trying to find the elusive 5/16 nut driver. And it looks like I'm putting the starter rope through, and there's our gas tank, which was full of old gas and water. So what am I doing? Doing something else off camera. Listen, I work in a shop. I own my own shop, and everyone that comes like, "Oh, you own your own shop." And let me tell you, it's not easy. And it's not easy at all. It's very hard and expensive. Don't let the figures fool you. We'll just leave it at that. So on these Quantum engines, you want to make sure you put the side bolt and the spacer back in, because if you don't, the vibration will crack the tank. And those tanks are not cheap. And this is a later model that had the push fit spacer. Some of the older ones, they were a separate piece and a little bit longer. So no two engines are alike. Make that very, very clear. And we're going to tighten that up, but not all the way. Or am I? I don't remember. This was a couple days ago when I did this video. Dope, but I more than likely did tighten it off camera. Of course I did. So now we're going to put shoulder bolts back in the top, and the torque spec I think is 20 inch-pounds. But I just tighten them up until I'm comfortable with how they feel. You don't have to always torque bolts on a small engine. It's like a common misconception. The only time you want to do it is if you do internals, like, piston and rings, connecting rod, things of that nature. That has to be torqued to whatever the book calls for. Otherwise, you're going to have problems. Bad problems. So I'm tightening up the shoulder bolts for the top of the gas tank. And I can't say it enough, I hope everyone is enjoying the new style of videos. There's not a lot of time-lapsing. I don't put music in these videos. I just sit here and talk as the repair is going on. And I was looking at the gas line, and it was looking pretty questionable. So I'm going to replace it. And I should have cut all this out, which will probably in this section here. And let's go get a piece of gas line and put it on. Alright, so we're going to fit the new piece of gas line here. And excuse the noises in the background. That's my computer chair hitting my desk. So you always want to cut gas line longer than it needs to be. And the reasoning for that is because you can always make it shorter, but you can't make it longer. And you just see me spray WD-40 on the gas tank and the carburetor where the gas line's going to go on the fittings. That makes it go on a lot easier. And WD-40 is inert. It will not, contaminate anything in the carburetor, won't hurt it or anything. It will go right on through the system as normal. Don't use stuff like PB Blast or things of that nature. Just WD-40 just to, get it to where it slides on there a lot easier. And I made it way too long, and I just eyeballed it. I don't know the certain length that it's supposed to be. So I cut it and went to put it on, and I'm doing something in the background again. I'm finding the hose clamp. So put it on, and you notice that it's got too much of a curve in it. would this probably have hurt it? No, but it's a gravity-fed system. And I didn't like that, dip in the line, or that curve. See there, I'm looking at it. So I'm going to cut a little more off. This is why I say make it longer than it should be, and cut to fit. And these little pieces of gas line make great spacers and stuff, if need be. And it's going to be a perfect fit now. And it is. It's almost as good as factory. Alright, now we're going to put the airbox back on, or whatever you want to call it. And that's my computer chair again. I'm recording these voiceovers per the segment. And that's a lot easier than, talking for 20 minutes straight. So I'm doing something in the background again. I was looking for the screws because they're in the bowl that's behind me on the floor. And we're going to start these. I did put a Loctite on there. You can use the orange or the blue. Don't ever use red. These bolts will break. And I've seen people use red Loctite before. And red Loctite's only supposed to be used on high temperature applications and applications that require it, high vibration areas, things like that. But the good thing about the orange Loctite is it has the strength of red, but it's removable like the blue. So I kind of use the orange more than the blue, but it's all what it calls for and what I feel comfortable putting it on. Because chances are I'm going to be the next person to fix this again. Or whoever fixes it again in the near future. I don't want to make it hard on nobody. So you just get those hand tightened. I think the torque spec's 20 inch-pounds. Could be 30, but don't, listen to me on torque specs. Like I said before, torque specs are only for certain things, like cylinder head, and when you go internal for the connecting rod and stuff. And that's what I love about these Quantum motors is the flip open air box. It makes changing air filter so easy, and you never lose the door. I'm going to tighten that up, and I use a screwdriver, and I just snugged it up with the nut driver. It's late at night when I'm recording this, so yeah. And I wanted the slot to turn a different way, and we're on the next clip. And what do we find? An E3 spark plug. I could make a video alone on these horrible spark plugs. They do not work in small engines, air-cooled small engines. The spark advance is way too much on them, and they double spark, and they cause a whole host of problems. I had a riding mower that was a no start. Started fine for me. I couldn't find anything wrong with it. I said, let me check a spark plug, see if they're fouled out by chance. It was an E3. Changed it. Never heard a word from the customer again about it not starting. So the E3 plugs, they don't work. I'm putting in an NGK BR2LM. It's the same as the J19LM, RJ19LM, B2LM, B4LM. Those will all interchange. But BR2LM is what my distributor had at the time, and that's what I got. And NGK is my plug of choice. Champions, I've never had a problem with them. And even the torch plugs I'll use time and time again, Spark plug's a spark plug, they all do the same thing. But NGK is like my go-to. Champions, pretty good. Never had a problem with them. The torch plugs are decent. They don't foul out as bad. That's what I like about them. Maybe one day I'll do a video on spark plugs, but let's see if this thing will run. Alright, now we are going to put the, I call it the decorative top piece on it. It says the horsepower and all of that. These motors, you don't have to run them on there. It just makes them look good. Funny thing is, when you used to get these Quantum motors, like the top cover that has the manufacturer's sticker on it, the manufacturer of the mower put that cover on there. So Quantum motors, engines, motors, whatever you want to call them, when you used to order a short block or a engine, sometimes it would come without the top cover. So we're going to tighten that up. These engines are, bulletproof. I'm not, biased towards any manufacturer because I work on stuff all the time, and everything will break eventually. So I'm not biased, but Quantum engines, they're my favorite. These are the motors that I grew up working on. And gosh, that's all through my childhood I've worked on these engines, and they're my favorite. And we're going to check underneath, make sure it has a blade and that it's not bent and nothing crazy is going on underneath. This thing has very little use on it, and yes, I have gotten equipment in before that had no blade on it, and you cannot start a small engine that does not have a heavy flywheel on it without a blade. And I made sure that the crankshaft wasn't bent or the blade adapter wasn't broke, because that would lead me to believe that it had a sheared flywheel key, timing issue, rope being pulled out of hand. Wouldn't be fun. So we are going to, in the next clip that you will see momentarily, start it up.